this on this computer. Yeah, I guess it's just not meant to be because Flowdesk is not loading at all right now. In Safari or Google Chrome. So we're gonna go with it. Welcome to day 8. Day 8. Let me flip to it. We made it out of Genesis. Now we're getting into the stories that are not super common because a lot of the same stories get told over and over again. That's what made me want to read the Bible in the first place, like read it by myself all the way through, was because I'm like, I'm tired of hearing the same stories every Easter. You know, Easter's coming up. Every Easter is the same story. I understand it's Easter, but dang, can we get some mixture up in here? Like, they tell the same stories over and over again, even on other days though. So let's go to day 8, which is, let me close this so I can see the chat. There we go. Yeah, let's go to day 8, which is on page 41. Moses and the burning bush, speaking of hearing the same stories over and over again. We're getting there. We're getting to the lesser known parts. I feel like the lesser known stories are stories where we really can think a little bit deeper, and draw some unknown parallels. Like reading this together, even if you already know the story of Moses and the burning bush, you may have a little bit of a different perspective than you've gotten before from hearing the story from other people versus reading it, for yourself and having your own interpretation. But when we start getting deeper into this, it's going to be like, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that. So those things are going to start happening soon. So just hang on. All right. So page 41, day 8. It should say week 2, day 3 at the top, but day 8. God saves Moses' life and called him to lead the Israelites. So today's reading is Exodus 3. We'll turn to Exodus 3. Here we go. God said, in Exodus 3:14 says, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. That's like one of the best verses in the Bible ever. I am who I am. Like, every time I read something in God's voice, I'm like, ooh, like with my deep voice and stuff. I don't know why I do that. Maybe because in all movies, Morgan Freeman is depicted as God and his voice is like super deep. So as Exodus 3 opens, we find Moses in a most extraordinary encounter, standing next to a burning bush, wrestling through his doubts with God. If you have imposter syndrome, just reading about Moses kind of helps you realize, like, wow, I'm a really great leader. Like, I can really do this. If Moses did it, all the amazing things that he did, I can definitely do it, because Moses had a lot of doubt. He had a lot of imposter syndrome. He had a lot of doubt with God. His faith wasn't always the strongest. It got to that point, but it didn't start off that way. So previously we talked a lot about like Abraham, and he had pretty strong faith. And I'm trying not to get what I'm studying mixed up with what we're studying together, but Abraham, Noah, because we talked about Noah. And so they had pretty strong faith. They were like people who really didn't do anything like bad per se. I mean, like Noah drank before. Abraham had a baby with his servant. I guess that's bad. I guess that's bad. But Moses was like the first person I read about, and I was like, he's a real person. Like he, we really go through that type of thing. So question 1 says, well, let me do this. I want to read you the beginning of Exodus so we get a little bit of backstory. And let me make sure I'm on the right day. Monday. No, we started on Wednesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, I'm on the right day. Okay. All right. So Exodus The description of Exodus says this: get up, leave, go these words, sound good to those trapped or enslaved. Some resist their marching orders, however, preferring present surroundings to a new, unknown environment. Trading the comfortable security of the known for an uncertain future is not easy. But what if God gives the order to move? Will we follow his lead? Exodus describes a series of God's call and the responses of his people. So this is like the first time where we see God saying to people, I'm about to take you out of your comfort zone. I need you to follow me. 400 years had passed since Joseph moved his family to Egypt. These descendants of Abraham had now grown to over 2 million strong. That's crazy. Like, from a man who couldn't even have kids until he was 100 to having 2 million descendants is insane. To Egypt's new pharaoh, the Hebrews were foreigners and their numbers were frightening. Pharaoh decided to make them slaves so they wouldn't upset his balance of power. As it turned out, that was his biggest mistake. God then came to the rescue of his people. Don't mess with God's people, bro. Through a series of strange events, a Hebrew boy named Moses became a prince in Pharaoh's palace and then an outcast in the wilderness. Wait, I'm getting some feedback. There we go. Okay, then an outcast in the wilderness. God visited Moses in the mysterious flames of a burning bush, and after some discussion, Moses agreed to return to Egypt to lead God's people out of slavery. Pharaoh was confronted, and through a cycle of plagues and promises made and broken, Israel was torn from his grasp. Mobilizing this mass of humanity was no easy task, but they marched out of Egypt through the Red Sea and into the wilderness behind Moses in the pillars of cloud and fire. Despite continual evidence of God's love and power, the people complained and began to yearn for their days in Egypt. God provided for their physical and spiritual needs with food and a place to worship, but he also judged their disobedience and unbelief. Then, in the dramatic Sinai meeting with Moses, God gave his laws for the right living. God led Moses and the nation of Israel, and he wants to lead us as well. Is he preparing you like Moses for a specific task? He will be with you. Obey and follow. He is delivering you from an enemy. Is he delivering you from an enemy or a temptation? Trust him and do what he says. Have you heard his clear moral directions? Read, study, and obey his word. Is he calling you to true worship? Discover God's presence in your life, in your home, and in the body of assembled believers. Exodus is the exciting story of God's guidance. Read with determination to follow God wherever he leads you. So that's like the preface of Exodus, not the actual like Bible verse, but just the preface that they give you in the beginning of. I have a life application Bible, but every Bible, like in the beginning of each book, has a little bit of a synopsis to tell you like what's going on. And normally before I read, for myself at least, I like to read that so I have an understanding of what the bigger picture is that's going on here. So question 1 for today said, where else do we see God revealing himself or his will accompanied by fire? So there are a couple of other reference verses there all throughout Exodus, also in Malachi and in Hebrews. Let me turn this off. Also in Malachi and in Hebrews. And so I already went and read them. And so I'll give you guys the synopsis. So in Exodus, in the pillar of fire to give them light. So there's a pillar of fire. We've got the burning bush. Also in Exodus chapter 15, you sent forth your wrath and consumed them like a stubble. And then in Exodus 19 at Mount Sinai. And then in Malachi, who can endure this day of coming? He is like a refiner's fire. And Hebrews, for our God is consuming fire. So God is known to use fire to signify that his presence is there and to accomplish certain things. And I think that's because like fire gets our attention. Like, let's be honest, we're still human. Like we have very short attention spans. Fire. So he uses it in a lot of different ways. I also think that the reason why he tends to use fire is because he promised Noah that he was no longer going to use water. So I don't know if you guys caught that when we read about Noah, but a part of God's covenant with Noah was, hey, Noah, I need you to do this for me. You know, gather the animals, gather only your immediate family, yada, 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 yada. God's part of the covenant was, I'm never again going to wipe the earth out with water. And so I think that's why he uses fire more than anything else. So it says, why would God choose fire? Because throughout the scripture, God presents fire as purifying and refining. It separates the impurities and leaves what is valuable. Friend, when God brings or allows the fiery furnace of discomfort in our lives, it does not burn indiscriminately. It burns intentionally to make us more like him. We can trust that it is always for our refinement and never for our destruction. God knew Moses was about to walk with God's people through some serious refining. God also knew Moses lacked what he needed to step into his assignment, so the fire was dramatic, necessary, and a powerful reminder of who God was, who Moses was, and who God was calling him to be. You'll hear me say a lot, success is about who you are. It's not about what you know, and it's not about who you know, it's about who you are, right? Because you can know the right people, but if you're not the right person, they're not going to tell somebody about you. So yeah, you may network and have all these great circles, and networking is still very important. But if you're not taking time to invest in your personal development and who you are, like being a standout person, being a unique person, being a servant, being someone that people want to be around, then no one's ever going to bring your name up in a room that you're not in. Right. So it's first and foremost about who you are, not who you know, and not what you know, which is why sometimes you'll meet people who know a lot less than you, who are a lot farther than you. Or sometimes you'll have a supervisor who is not as smart as you, but they're in a higher position than you. It's who they are, right? It's who they are. So God also knew, oh no, I read that part. He knew that Moses lacked what he needed to step into his assignment. I think that's important. God will call you and know that you are lacking too. Because sometimes people will make you believe like, man, there's a lot of unlearning we have to do that we can talk in church. But people will have you believe that if God calls you, that means that you're prepared. It doesn't mean that you're prepared. It means that he can either prepare you or you can handle what's coming to you. That what you need is already inside of you. But you could still be unprepared for the assignment, in which case you need to prepare. For a very long time, as an entrepreneur, I did not prepare for stuff. Like I taught whole coaching programs where all I had was an outline. I did not prepare no slides, nothing, because I knew it. So I would teach it like the back of my hand. And I thought that was okay because it was better than what, I had seen other people put out. But then I realized, what if I prepared? Like if you're good without preparing, if you feel like I can do this job with my eyes closed, or this project they gave me, it's super easy, or I have to run this meeting like it's going to be, and you don't prepare, imagine how great you could be if you prepared. A lot of people wait, like they wait for the door to open. They wait for, somebody to be like, oh, we need you to do this. Imagine if you prepared and said, this is what's going to happen. I'm prepared, right? So we know success as preparation meets opportunity. You can prepare. You can also create the opportunity. That's why success is a decision, because you could do both of those things, right? You can do both of those things. And they had it a lot harder than we have it. Like we have social media, we've got LinkedIn, we have networking events, we got email, like you can prepare yourself and get in front of the right person. Keep that in mind. In Exodus 3:11, Moses, who had been hiding as a fugitive for 40 years, questioned God's assignment. Moses asked, who am I that I should go and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? So this is when Moses starts saying, me? Are you sure you're talking to that person? God simply replied, I will be with you. I will be with you. That's Exodus 4:12. That's a good verse. Write that on a sticky note and put it somewhere where you see it every day. It is interesting that God doesn't build up Moses' confidence. He simply gives Moses a promise. He affirmed that he would be with Moses. Maybe it's your responsibility to build up your confidence. Maybe you shouldn't be waiting for God to make you feel confident. Maybe you should go read a book about confidence, right? Because why are you waiting? Unnecessary waiting. Moses asked for more assurance. Who exactly is it that will be with him as he returns to Egypt? So now he's like asking questions. I love questions, because questions, and you should be happy when people ask you questions, because questions let you know that they're actually considering. They're like, okay, maybe this is for me. Let me start asking some questions to get some more details. So God then gives Moses a special revelation of who he is. God gives Moses a new name to call him. God says, I am who I am. Though the meaning of the name is not completely certain, one possible meaning is, I will be to you all that I am. How I love this name God has given Moses in the midst of the fear of the unknown. God knew what lay ahead for Moses, and Moses did not. Through his name, God promised to be everything Moses needed, everything Israel needed to ensure that the nations around them knew that the Israelites' God was the one true God. Okay, so let's pause here for a second, because I just had a revelation while reading this that the importance is okay. So there's importance that, like, God says, I am who I am, right? But what's even more interesting is that God told Moses to say that to the people, but Moses didn't know if the people were going to understand, right? There was no way for him to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to roll up on them and say, oh, God said I am who I am, and they're just going to automatically know who you are. Like, that wasn't a thing, right? It was almost like if I told you to go pick me up, you know, $20 at the grocery store and tell them that Boobaloo sent you. And you're like, Boobaloo? Like, what? What is Boobaloo, right? I just made that word up. What is that? You don't know that when you get there that if you say that, they're going to know what you're talking about. Like, you have no idea. You may get there and say, Boobaloo sent me. And they're looking at you like, what are you talking about? But what happened was he just trusted that he was supposed to say what he was supposed to say. He showed up, he said it, and they understood. Sometimes God will tell you to do something and you're trying to make sense of it. Stop trying to make sense of it. Just go and show up, because you don't know what that means to somebody else. I've been sitting, once I sat with somebody and had a conversation. This was late last year. And I had a casual conversation with her, and I could hear God speaking to me. And this probably happens to you. You hear this little voice in the back of your head say, tell her this, tell her that, do this, do that, right? And you don't listen to it because you don't understand it. Stop trying to understand it, right? So I had sat and had a conversation with her, and I was hearing that in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna stay, because why would I, I'm not fighting no more. Like, I'm not going back and forth with Jesus. I'm not doing it. So I just said it. And when I said the things, I didn't know what the impact was gonna be with her. And she was like, wow, that's crazy, because I said that exact same thing to my husband the other day. And so for her, it made sense. For me, it didn't, but it's okay, because it wasn't for me. I was just a vehicle, right? I was just a messenger. Sometimes you are just a messenger. So the importance of you carrying the message and just following directions can mean so much for other people. And for a lot of us, even as entrepreneurs and as, you know, employees and working in different places, of course we want to be paid, but more than money, we want to feel appreciated. We want to feel like people recognize, you know, us as individuals and know who we are, and we want to be impactful and remembered. And the only way to do that is to be the messenger. The only way to do that is to be the messenger, right? So keep that in mind. Dr. Deja says it can mean he trusts you at that time and can develop you along what you need along the way. Exactly, yes. Because he's gonna pick you before you're prepared. Ooh, that's a good post. He's gonna pick you before you're prepared. The decision is then up to you whether you're going to prepare or not. And if you don't prepare, he will pick somebody else. Do y'all know that? He will pick somebody else. We're going to get to it later on. But there were times where God said, like, for example, he said to Saul, hey, I need you to be king. And Saul had a problem with patience. He wasn't patient. He said, you know what? You're not my king anymore. Now David's going to be king of the Israelites. So he will pick you before you're prepared. And if you do not prepare, if you wait too long, or if you don't wait long enough, you will be replaced. You'll get another opportunity somewhere other down the line, but you still have human will, and he got his own agenda. So you better get with his agenda, or somebody else is going to get with it. They call it what? A man after God's own heart. When he picks somebody new, that phrase will pop up. When he takes a blessing from someone or a position from someone and gives it to someone else, you'll see that phrase. Such and such, the person he gives it to, was a man after God's own heart. It pops up a bunch of times even. So you gotta be careful. That God's timing, serious thing, serious thing. It's easier to get in alignment with God's timing though, when you're like continually reading the Bible, because you're able to recognize the signs. So question 2 says, how do the following New Testament passages undergird what we have learned in today's reading? So that's a reference to Romans chapter 8, 1 Peter, and James. Here's what I wrote. God's love is everlasting regardless of the circumstances. Your faith and the genuineness of your faith, and the genuineness of your faith be much more, no, why did I write that like that? Is much more precious to God. I cannot read my own handwriting. Count it joy when you get tested. Know that tests will bring patience. Okay, why did I write that like that? I don't know. Summary. God's gonna love you either way, right? We know that part. Here's what's more important. Count it as joy when you get tested. When you get tested, be happy you got tested, right? Being able to recognize when you're being tested and having that patience, like, oh, this is just a test. Sometimes things happen and I'm like, you're not gonna get me. Sometimes I'd be like, not today, Satan. Have you ever said that something happened? You'd be like, not today, Satan. Because you know you're being tested. So just be on your P's and Q's. What a beautiful reminder that who we are is not nearly as important as who God is. Again, as we did last week, we need to ask where or to whom do we look to fill our longings? More specifically, we should pause and ask in what or whom do we place our faith? I put up a reel about that last night. I'm not placing my faith in Instagram to decide whether my business is going to make money or not. I'm going to have a conversation with God about it and believe that what God has called me to do, as long as I'm doing what God has called me to do. Now, if you're not doing what God has called you to do and you're just like, I'm going to start a boutique because my cousin started a boutique and she's making money. Like, if you're doing that, you on your own because you outside of the covenant. But if you do what God has called you to do, regardless of whether you think you can monetize that or not, because it's not about monetizing the skill, it's about serving. And when you are serving in accordance to what God has called you to do, he's going to take care of you. So the money's going to naturally come, right? But I just lost my whole train of thought. Yeah. So don't place your faith, and it's very easy to do this. Don't place your faith in all the other little things, like the analytics. You want to be aware, but don't make all your decisions based off the analytics. Make your decisions based off the conversations that you've had with God. And that was a shift that I had to take as a business owner. In things of this world, in idols, as the pagan nations did, in making a name for ourselves, like the ones who built the Tower of Babel, or do we place our faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in Israel's God, the one true God? I completely understand that phrase now. Before I didn't understand that phrase, because people will say that a lot. You know, and I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That comes up a lot too. He'll say that, like, or people will say, oh yeah, my God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now we know who Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are. Friend, God, who is our great I am, fulfills every longing of our hearts. Jesus carries this truth forward into the New Testament as he declares his many magnificent names. He is the bread of life sent so we never need to hunger or thirst again. He is the light of the world, so we never have to walk in darkness again. He is the good shepherd who will lead us so we never feel anxious, fearful, lost, or alone again. He is the resurrection and the life who guarantees abundant life here on earth and forever in heaven with him. Take a few moments to ponder where you place your faith when you doubt, fear the unknown, or question God's actions. Is your faith based on you, or is it anchored in who God is, his character, his word, his power, his very presence living within you? And so then we see, right? So that's the end of the study for today. But then we see a couple of reference verses where he says, I am who I am. So you can go read those. Shawana, how do I know what? I think I missed that. God's timing, or doing what God's called you to do? Oh, if you're doing what you're called to do. That's a good question. How do you know if you're doing what God's called you to do? I like to look backwards. So God will give you clues. So if you look back at things that you've done in your life, even back into childhood, what are some of the things that came natural to you, right? Are gifts. That's when you start to recognize, oh, this is my gift. What are some of the things that you've done or some of the skills that you've done that come natural to you? I start to look at those things. Then you start to look at what makes you feel good, like what fills you up when you do those things. Because passion is a seed planted by God. So what makes you feel good when you're doing, sometimes when in your business, you'll notice that some things feel better than others. Like for me, creating content feels like way better than writing an email, right? So comes natural, solves a problem, and then plays your heart, right? Then look at who are the people that you like to help. These natural likes and passions and feelings, is listening to those emotions. That's going to help you start to decide who are people that you like to help. Think about your favorite clients you've had in the past. And then look at who are these people? What is their background? So looking at all of those different factors, and then I would look at all that, and then I would come up with a list. Like, this is a list of things that I think I'm called to do. Like, I think I'm called to help single moms with their finances. These are like actual conversations I've had this week. But I have a client who feels like she's called to help single moms with their finances. I have a client who feels like she is called to help. I'm trying to think of real people because it makes sense. It makes more sense. I have a client who feels like he's called to help women build their confidence. So create that list of things that you think you're called to do based off of your natural gifts, the people you like to help, and the things that you're passionate about. Then I would take that list and I would pray on it. I would pray on it, and I'd probably do a fast, because it's a little bit easier for you to hear a response to your prayer when you start to remove things from your life that are distractions. Food is a distraction, TV is a distraction, social media is a distraction. Like, let's just be real right now. Sometimes music can be a distraction depending on how much you listen to it. So you want to start to remove things that you're doing that fill up your time so that you can have more empty space. And in that empty space, you'll be able to just sit with yourself and just think. Mull over that list. Mull is like the perfect adjective. Mull over that list and think, what's happening in my life right now? Like, what do I feel like is the next move? What do I feel like is the next step? You're going to get an answer. Don't fight it, right? You're going to get a natural first answer. Like, and you may question it, because you may be like, oh, I should do this. You're like, no, I shouldn't do that. Go with the yes, I should do this, right? That first answer. This is kind of hard to explain, but whatever that natural first inclination is, do that and keep praying. Sometimes you'll have to do something before you do what you're called to do. But you got to keep praying. Don't just pray over the list, get your first natural inclined answer, and then stop moving or stop talking to him. Because sometimes you have to do other things to prepare to do what you're called to do. Like, I've had jobs. This is why I recommend everybody have a career. Like, don't go straight into entrepreneurship just because you don't want to have no supervisor. Like, somebody's going to tell you what to do. But you need a preparation before you do what you're called to do. And sometimes that preparation is doing something that's not necessarily your calling, but requires those same skills. Kind of like in the Karate Kid. This is a really good example. In the Karate Kid, when he had him like mopping the floors and like washing the car and all that, that was him doing the preparation before he was doing what he was called to do. So do that process and then go in the community and let us know. You can let us know. You can go in there and post too, like, this is the list I came up with. Do that, and then drop me your Instagram page. Because sometimes I can look at people's, like, I can look at what they're doing and it sticks out to me. What it may be. Yeah, your purpose doesn't change, but your calling might. And that is why you have to be like, the pivot, you have to be flexible. Not even just as an entrepreneur, as a person, you have to be flexible, because it's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to feel like a straight line to you. It may look like a straight line from God's perspective, but from our perspective, it may look like I'm going over here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I did a lot of stuff before I got to this point. And right now, where I feel like now I'm doing what I'm called to do. I'm supposed to be bringing these two worlds together. But I did a whole lot of different stuff before I got here, and it made no sense. Now it makes sense looking backwards. This beauty knows business. I'm thinking about changing that. Don't be ashamed of your Instagram name now. A lot of us still got email addresses from middle school, so don't be ashamed. Be ashamed. All right, so that's it for today. If you want to read a little bit about Moses and the burning bush, you can go read all of chapter 3. It's not super long. And chapter 4 details out signs for Moses, like the signs that God gave Moses. That might help you kind of try to look into like what signs that you may be getting that you haven't really seen. But yeah. Do the removal. Do not be afraid to do the removal. A lot of people are like, fasting? Oh my gosh, that's scary. I can't do it. I'm gonna starve, I'm gonna die. A day or two, you'll be all right. And I don't mean fasting completely from food, but like maybe not eating as frequently, or not eating certain things, like just fruits and vegetables, like a Daniel's fast. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, which is basically vegan or raw vegan, for a couple of days. No TV, no Netflix, no social media use, especially the social media use, because social media will cloud your judgment, because you're like looking at what other people are doing, and so then it starts putting additional thoughts and information in your head. And you're like, maybe I should do this because I saw somebody do this. Maybe I should do that because I saw this on Instagram. So it's a distraction. So you come up with a number, first number you come up with, and make that your period of, I'm asking for something, or I'm praying for something, praying for an answer to something. And this is the period of time I'm going to wait for that answer. And then maybe add a day or two on the back end. Because sometimes, like Saul, which I think is like in a couple of days, we get to that story. But in some situations like Saul, his messenger, so this is what happens. So the way God operates is that he'll talk to you, but then he'll also send people to talk to you, which is why it's important to like have a coach and be in the right circle, and like have a specified mentor or coach or leader that is also spiritually in tune with God, because he'll give you messages through other people. Like I have somebody who's not my coach, but I consider her to be like my best friend, but she's like in my, what would I call it? I was going to say holy board of directors, but because the board of directors does that for a company, like they give you those kind of like messages, but she's like in my holy board of directors. And so she'll text me sometimes and be like, now, you're supposed to be fasting. And I'll be like, dang, because I definitely thought I was supposed to be fasting, but I wasn't going to do it until you said it to me. So you need to make sure that you have that set up too, so that when you do go into that period of removal and removing things and you're praying, you can give it an extra couple of days